We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, Jeremy Hunt's got his priorities straight.
So I start today by remembering the Muslims who died in 2 world wars.
Is Priti Patel happy?
I'll say it, we've got the highest tax burden in 70 years. That is a fact. Taxes are too high. Taxes have been going up.
And is Anglophobia on the rise? Also...
And we have breaking news right now. Malaysia Airlines confirms it has lost contact with a plane carrying 227 passengers.
10 years since one of the greatest aviation mysteries. What happened to MH370? Plus, is a dominatrix about to put naked Prince Harry photos online? On my panel is editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, landlord and activist Adam Brooks, and journalist Rebecca Reid. Oh, what's all this about?
Why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers, and really, why don't you f*** off? How about that?
Get ready, Britain, here we go. I address the elephant in the room next.
At 9:01, I'm Polly Middlehurst in the GB newsroom, and our top story tonight. All eyes were on the Chancellor today as he delivered his spring budget. He cut personal taxes to their lowest level in nearly 50 years, with another 2 pence in the pound cut in national insurance being the centrepiece of his pre-election budget. But figures suggest expected rises in council tax will wipe out any benefits felt by households. Speaking after his statement in the Commons today, Jeremy Hunt said his budget marks a big reduction in the tax bill for ordinary families.
What you see is that after a 4 percentage points cut in national insurance, there is a big reduction in the tax bill for ordinary families. And that is because the economy's turned a corner. We've stuck to the plan we have. The forecasts are much more optimistic for the economy going forward. And as Conservatives, we believe that if we bring down the tax burden, that will fire up the economy, create more jobs, more money for public services like the NHS.
So what were the other key elements of that spring budget? Well, first of all, the non-dom tax status will be scrapped and is going to be replaced by what the Chancellor's calling a modern residency system. The Great British Pub will also get a boost from the government with a freeze on alcohol duty. And the child benefit threshold increases to £60,000 a year. And there's a 5 pence cut to fuel duty, and that's locked in for 12 months. The VAT registration threshold goes up from £85,000 to £90,000 a year. The pensions regulator will get new powers to make sure people with defined contributions are getting value from their investments. And there's a new ISA scheme with a £5,000 yearly allowance for investments in Britain. And the NHS IT systems will get a £3.5 million upgrade. Now, in other news today, the House of Lords has defeated the government in all 10 votes on its Rwanda bill. It sets the stage now for an extended battle between the Commons and the House of Lords over the government's flagship immigration policy. However, Downing Street says peers should be working with MPs to protect innocent lives after the Prime Minister made stopping the boats a centrepiece of his leadership. 5 people were arrested for spraying red paint on a government building in Scotland in a pro-Palestinian protest. The activists scaled Queen Elizabeth House in Edinburgh, replacing the Union flag with a Palestinian one. The demonstrators say the UK government is complicit in the Gaza conflict and call for a boycott of companies supporting Israel. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's budget day. Will Jeremy Hunt slash inheritance tax? Will he fund our armed forces? Will he pull a rabbit out of the hat that will win the Tories the next election?
As we mourn the tragic loss of life in Israel and Gaza, the Prime Minister reminded us last week of the need to fight extremism and heal divisions. So I start today by remembering the Muslims who died in 2 world wars in the service of freedom and democracy. We need a memorial to honour them. I've decided to allocate £1 million towards the cost of building one. Whatever your faith or colour or class, this country will never forget the sacrifices made for our future.
£1 million statue to Muslims who gave their lives in World War I and World War II. Hey, look, fine, all right. Look, what else have you got there, Mr. Hunt?
I have 3 gorgeous children, the oldest of whom has been patiently listening in the gallery. The NHS is rightly the biggest reason most of us are proud to be British.
No. The reason most people are proud to be British is not because of our most bloated and dysfunctional public service. We all went outside and clapped for the NHS during COVID. Now we should just go outside and set fire to a £50 note instead. That'll get him dancing. There we go. Yeah, lovely stuff. He's promised to close to another £7 billion for the NHS. OK? For people who bang on about the NHS being understaffed and under-resourced, figures show that we will be spending around 180 billion quid on the NHS in the coming year. Since 2013, the overall number of employees in the NHS is up 35%. Doctors are up 37%. Nurses, midwives and health visitors up 23%. Support for clinical staff up 45%. NHS infrastructure and support staff up 41%. We have around 1.3 million people working in the NHS. Of course, the elephant in the room is here. Rapid, huge population growth fuelled by mass migration. Our population in 2013 was about 64 million. Today it's about 68 million. By the mid-2030s, that's expected to be 73.7 million. We are heading towards the highest tax burden since 1948. What are we paying for? Record waiting lists? Billions of pounds in negligence claims, junior doctors out on strike every 2 minutes, and they're all overstretched. Why? Could it be anything to do with the millions more people we keep piling on top of it? Jeremy Hunt said 3 times at the dispatch box today that the Treasury couldn't keep relying on mass immigration. And then, wallop, the Office for Budget Responsibility upped its projected migration prediction from 245,000 in the medium term to 315,000. It's really great to have people coming to this country to work in the NHS. I want to make that absolutely abundantly clear, and I will get a lot of comments from people here saying that if it wasn't for immigration, we wouldn't have an NHS. Yeah, absolutely fine. But we have a lot of other people coming here as well, don't we? Did you know that the Department for Work and Pensions has stopped telling us how many people are on welfare by their nationality? Basically, they're hiding how many immigrants are on benefits. And HMRC isn't revealing tax contributions by nationality, so we don't officially know which demographic now pays more tax. Lovely. Our politicians are addicted to mass immigration. Our NHS is creaking at the seams, and we're all paying for it. But let's get the thoughts now of my panel. I've got the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday. It's the wonderful Charlotte Griffiths. I've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and I have got journalist and author Rebecca Reid. Adam, I'll start with you. I mean, good grief, the elephant in the room about this budget for me today, certainly when it came to the NHS, was, well, we're paying for it because of rapid, massive population growth, aren't we?
How can we have 30% or 35% more staff and still struggle? Record funding as well, so there's problems. Now, again, 4 million extra people in this country is going to put pressure on services. We've seen that. Try and get a doctor's appointment, a dentist appointment. You know, hospitals are full up. Now, COVID has played a massive part as well. Our National Health Service become the COVID Health Service. It prioritised COVID over everything. So now we've got people that are still waiting for treatment that they should have had 2 or 3 years ago. We're having hundreds of thousands of people dying because they didn't get seen or diagnosed during the COVID era. I think that's unacceptable and unforgivable. We've also got things like, I think it's PFI that Gordon Brown brought in during the Labour government, and trusts are still paying billions. A lot of their funding goes towards these loan repayments. So there's a lot going wrong with the NHS. There's waste, there's corruption, there's people that have jobs that shouldn't have jobs. It needs remodelling, and we need to start again, because we're not going to stop immigration. It's only going to get worse. So, you know, will we have a health service left in a few years?
Charlotte, do you think it's time to acknowledge that one of the major factors in the problems with our NHS is the fact that we've got this rapid population growth?
Definitely. Of course we've got to acknowledge that. And just anecdotally, I had a baby last year. I had this amazing midwife. She's been there for 30 years. She said she's never, ever, ever been busier. I then went on to have the baby in a waiting room because they're in the hospital. They couldn't find it. There was no rooms. There was no midwives. My midwife was sweet. She was just like, I've never been so busy. I've never found it so hard to work because there are language barriers. And, you know, that's just one example, but there's millions of examples. It's interesting that this stat is that actually 41% is infrastructure and support. So obviously they're increasing too many staff who aren't nurses and doctors, but there are too many people. And, you know, maybe it's time to have that other elephant in the room, which is the conversation about free at the point of use, because, you know, what's one way of curbing the number of people who are taking advantage of the system? It's to question that foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rebecca, look, it is absolutely fair to say, and it's just right to say, really, that as it currently stands, we would not have an NHS that functioned if we did not have immigration. So I don't want to conflate the two issues here between immigrants coming and working in the NHS and rapid population growth hammering the NHS as a result of mass migration.
But I'm not sure it's actually the key problem, because so there are multiple problems with the NHS. One of them, yes, is absolutely the population growth isn't in line with the NHS's management. But other things like we are an incredibly ill country. There are more people who are off sick than there should be. There are more people who are in ill health than there should be. We're a very mentally ill country. That's a huge burden. Now, immigration is supporting the NHS in one sense because 17% of the NHS is immigrant-based. There is no support for the NHS coming from people being iller. We also have an ageing population, which we really, really are sleepwalking our way into a crisis with, and therefore people who are older need more care. The majority of economic migrants who are 25-year-old Albanian men are not using the NHS very much because demographically 25-year-old men don't need the NHS very much.
So
I do recognise...
So you're admitting that
more
Albanians are now coming over and draining the country?
I didn't... When did I say they were draining the country?
Well, they're causing a problem, aren't they?
If you listen to the whole sentence, that's the opposite of what I said. I completely agree that economic migration is not fair and our immigration system doesn't work. I have always accepted that. What I'm saying is the people who are using it are not the single 25-year-old men who come over here. And generally, but in the case of the Albanian immigrants, the majority of them are sending money back. They're not having families here.
But let's also look at other things in the round. You know, education, getting school places, for example. That's a massive problem. The housing crisis, that's a massive problem.
But these things have been problems for a very, very long time.
It doesn't help if you plonk another 700,000 people a year on something.
And this is where many on the left tie themselves into knots, because they embrace this mass immigration and hit back at anyone that questions it, and then they want to moan about the services collapsing as well. You can't have it both ways. It's like the housing crisis. You're importing all these people into this country where they're going to be housed, but they're left to tie themselves in knots with that.
I don't think anybody's tying themselves in knot. I think people are recognising the immigration system doesn't work. It has got considerably worse in the last 13 years of the Tory government, the right, not the left.
Oh, Charlotte, go on.
I was going to say there are other things that we've got used to, because I do remember when they started putting up signs in hospitals in other languages and offering translation services, and we were quite shocked about that, and that was a long, long time ago. Now it's totally par for the course, and this midwife that I met last year was saying I really struggle because I can't speak to people because I don't know their language, and then you have to get additional staff in to help translate, and it's a crisis because they're giving birth on the floor, and, you know, all these things add up to a huge sense of confusion in the NHS.
I would argue the biggest, in terms of maternity services, your biggest issue is that they pay out millions and millions in negligent costs because the number of people who lose a baby in birth is higher than it used to be, which is extraordinary.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. I mean, our maternity in this country is shocking. Yeah. It is shocking.
Especially postpartum care, where people are just left alone on wards.
It is, but one...
made worse by too many people using it.
And one of the biggest reasons that they use in all medical negligence claims, not just about maternity, is this idea of being overworked and overstressed and overtired, and therefore the system...
But I think everybody...
You have to wonder why that is.
But I think everybody agrees that that's an issue, but people disagree on why. Personally, I think it's about the management of the NHS, not solely the usage of the NHS.
OK, Adam, do you think a single person in this country today is more likely to vote Conservative off the back of Jeremy Hunt's budget?
I think today's budget has lost them votes. I was sat at home screaming at the TV.
It wasn't that interesting. Why were you screaming?
Because, look,
what were you screaming?
I'm a publican. I've been a publican nearly 20 years, and this sort of gaslighting us that pubs are saying we've got to celebrate a freeze in alcohol duty or beer tax. You know, you can't celebrate something that doesn't make you better off. You're just putting it off to sort of hit us later down the line. And it's, for me, a lot of it was for PR headlines. There was no substance.
Then they didn't do a very good job because the PR headlines weren't ideal.
No, not at all. And I know that there is a lot of pushback to this idea, not the actual £1 million statue to Muslim war heroes itself, but I thought the positioning of that in the budget said a heck of a lot. The idea of leading in with that, I think, says a heck of a lot about where the Conservatives are at the moment and why they did it. We're just going to hear quickly now from the Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, who slammed the budget, shock horror, earlier on GB News Today.
If you look at the aggregate effect of the tax changes announced in this Parliament, people are paying higher taxes today than when the Parliament was formed in 2019. The national insurance cuts are only giving you back maybe half of the increase you've already had to suffer through the tax thresholds being frozen, through higher council taxes. The government puts more of the burden of things like social care onto the council tax burden. And people know this. I mean, people aren't stupid. They know they're not better off. And it's a tragedy that that's the reality after 14 years of Conservative government. But that is the case.
Well, he's right. People aren't stupid. People can see that Labour haven't got any policies there.
I mean, yes, we do. You guys nicked one of them today.
Yeah, that's the point.
The big one everyone's talking about is one of my lots.
The only one, arguably Labour's only policy that they haven't really U-turned on at all, is this non-dom stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, which I think is a fairly good idea. The only people who are cross about it are people who think there might be one day, and most of those people are not going to be one day.
I think the other people who are a bit cross about it is the idea that initially it was said that, right, it'll save us £3 billion a year, OK, or make us £3 billion a year. And then they realised that a load of these people might leave. And back in 2022, I think Jeremy Hunt himself said it would actually cost us £8 billion a year.
Good, leave. Fine. I think it's a moral thing. I think if you want to live somewhere, you should pay to live there.
That we now
join in.
As it stands with the non-doms, we've got the highest tax burden since World War II, and they are paying a heck of a lot of it.
I'm just so pleased to see rid of them that I don't even really care. I just think because if you care so little about the country you live in that you would choose to not pay tax in it, then I think that's really ghastly.
Would you voluntarily
especially if you grew up here and you took out...
You can voluntarily pay more.
Absolutely. I mean, me, personally, I'm not sure I have enough money to pay more. Well, my childcare bill is nearly £30,000 a year.
It's easy to say until you've got it.
Yes, but I think if I had millions of pounds, I might feel a little bit differently than if I have the amount of money that I have, which is childcare bill, mortgage and
what I found very patronising and quite childish was Jeremy Hunt saying to Labour about high taxes when we are sitting on the highest tax burden in 70 years. I think that was ill-judged to say that, and I think it was embarrassing.
But he was very popular. Sorry.
But it's all right, we'll just bang out of time, but we will be returning to all of this. Look, still to come, 10 years on from the disappearance of Malaysia flight MH370. What really happened to this vanishing jetliner and the 239 people on board? Aviation journalist Jeff Wise has been investigating the mystery. He joins me live shortly with some bombshell new leads that could finally solve the puzzle. But up next in our head-to-head, is top Daily Telegraph columnist and friend of the show, Alison Pearson, right to say that we should stop being scared of Islamophobia and start worrying about Anglophobia? Sunil Sharma, Chief Operating Officer for the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, and human rights activist Aisha Ali Khan do battle on that in just a tick. Don't miss it.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Well, we've been a constitutional monarchy since the late 17th century, and of course part of that deal is that the monarch, or indeed the close immediate royal family, should not interfere with politics that in any way could be seen to affect individual parties. Now, perhaps one of the most classic cases in the 20th century was Edward VIII, who during his brief reign went down to Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales, met thousands of people who'd lost their jobs in the steel industry. In fact, he shook so many hands in the end he had to change and shake with his left hand, and he said something must be done to get these people jobs. It was taken as a direct assault on the Conservative government of the day. And we could go on to Edward Heath, as many saw it, using the Queen to get us to join the common market, and things the Queen said during the referendum on Scottish separation. And we could, of course, talk about King Charles, who as Prince of Wales endlessly talked about climate change and net zero. But the intervention overnight from Prince William, I think, is the most direct political piece of interference that has international and global implications that I almost think we've ever seen. Prince William is saying to Israel, stop what you're doing. Some will see that as being given a free pass to Hamas. Many young people will say, hooray, he's doing the right thing. But whether he's doing the right thing or not, has he gone just too far with this? Should our future king intervene in this way? I don't believe that he should. I think he's making a very big mistake.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Now, coming up 10 years on from that disappearance that gripped the globe, what really happened to flight MH370? I speak to a man who thinks he knows. But first, it's time for tonight's head-to-head. OK, so a damning new opinion piece by Daily Telegraph and GB News star Alison Pearson says that Britain needs to stop being scared of Islamophobia and start worrying about Anglophobia. So she uses the real-world example of Miriam, a British woman forced for decades to live a cultural double life due to her Muslim father's traditional and repressive views and fear of integration. So Alison writes, I thought of Miriam when I watched George Galloway revel in his victory at the Rochdale by-election. There were no women on the ballot paper, and as far as I could see, there were no female faces among the Muslim brothers at Galloway rallies, apart from George's foxy fourth wife. Islamic patriarchy ruled. Now, her words, of course. And examples of Anglophobia aren't that difficult to find, really. Who remembers the London school forced to surrender to its students who burned a, quote, racist Union Jack flag? And just this week, the Shadow Culture Secretary became the latest to join the Rule Britannia critics.
It's a decision for the people who run the proms, and again, like I said, it shouldn't be politicians who tell people how to run cultural events. I think that for a lot of people that feels like a very sort of British moment, which I think has to be respected as well. But for a lot of people it will feel, as Jacob Mason said, it will feel alienating.
Meanwhile, schools admitted in a recent government report that white working-class pupils are rapidly falling behind other students and are the group that school leaders are now most concerned about. So tonight I'm asking, should we stop being scared of Islamophobia and start worrying more about Anglophobia? Let me know your thoughts. GBviews at gbnews.com, at GBnews on Twitter. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you the results very shortly. But first, going head-to-head on this are the COO of Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, Sunil Sharma, and human rights activist Aisha Ali Khan. Both of you, thank you very much. Sunil, I'll start with you. Should we be worrying more about Anglophobia, do you think?
Yes, for sure. I think the threats of Islamophobia have been completely over-exaggerated. I think to the point now where you can't even criticise Islamic extremism without being called Islamophobic. So I think for sure the threats to Anglophobia are far superior than they are for Islamophobia. And this is all backed up by pure statistics. Pure facts, nothing else, just looking at percentages. So we know for a fact that white British students are performing worse off than Muslim-based students. We know their literacy rates are lower. We know their numeracy rates are lower. We know at GCSE level they score lower than pretty much most groups. There's a couple of groups that do, I think Black Caribbeans fall a bit lower, travellers fall a bit lower. But aside from that, white British people in this country, in terms of education-wise, are far falling behind. And I think that's something that we should strongly address, considering that is the majority of the population. In particular, it's more of a problem amongst white boys. So we're seeing a much bigger issue with boys, in particular, with education. But on a broader spectrum, I think we need to stop necessarily talking so much about Islamophobia and address the fact that the majority of this country is white and British, and their standards are.
So no, I'll come back to you. Aisha, I'll throw it over to you. Quite a lot to come back to there. Go on.
I think that we can't ignore Islamophobia. We've had like 600% increase since last year's November of last year. I think what we need to Islamophobic attacks against Muslims in this country. I think what Sunil is highlighting is something that's been chronic in the British educational system. I've been a teacher for nearly 20 years. I have seen myself that of the sort of like the bottom two subgroups, it's white boys, white working class boys, which Sunil just rightly pointed out, but also Pakistanis and Bangladeshi boys. And those two sort of groups have swapped up and down between themselves. I think this idea that we should just ignore Islamophobia and just concentrate on what's going on with Anglophobia is really unfair, and it's wrong. Islamophobia does exist. There's so many examples. I've been a victim of it myself. And lots of insidious different ways as well. I can't just say somebody came up to me and said the P word to me, but there are examples where I've gone into a shop, for example, and my English friend hasn't been followed, but I have, because they think, oh, she's a brown person, she's going to steal something. I think we also need to understand that Alison Pearson's column touched a real nerve for me, with me, because that could have been me. That story about Miriam was my past, is my past. I've grown up with a lot of my friends who went to Pakistan, India and Bangladesh, got married at 15, 16, had families, disappeared from the educational system. I've had friends who've been in abusive marriages, were not able to leave because of cultural expectations. I've had friends who've also had to endure abuse by their own family members, parents, siblings, and then also the in well.
Does that not, Aisha, just before I go back to Sunil, with respect, does that not highlight Anglophobia? People not wanting to integrate into British culture, preferring to have more of their own traditional culture, as it were, and forcing that on young British girls?
Well, let me tell you, sorry, I was going to come to the point, Patrick. So much has moved on from the 20, 30 years ago. So much has moved on. Look at myself. I'm an educationalist. I'm a teacher. I went to university. I know family members. They've got degrees as well. Lots and lots of young women are completely shunning the practices of the community. They're traveling, they're deciding to live on their own, they're happy to work, they're happy to support themselves. They do not rely on their husbands, their fathers, their brothers. So we are moving on. And this column by Alison is just kind of pointing is blaming a community that can't defend themselves as easily as, say, other communities as well. So I think
all right,
it's
OK, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. Still on this, look, we do see, you know, quite regularly stuff now, things apparently being taught to kids in schools that seem to desecrate British culture or show it in a negative light in terms of our history. Pupils burning the Union flag at a school in Pimlico, for example. And arguably, as well, some of the things that we see taking place on the streets most Saturdays now, is that Anglophobia, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. I want to go back on the point about how things have changed on Aisha's point of thing, and they have, and they're getting better for sure. Parts of the Islamic community are definitely integrating more, but there are some cold, hard facts that still exist now. So 70% of Muslim women are unemployed versus 20% of Christian women that are unemployed. We see, to this day, 53% of all British Pakistanis are married to a blood relative. To this day, again, that's not necessarily first cousin, maybe second or third. 37% of all babies born between 2007 and 2011 were subject to British Pakistani parents who were first cousins. We know for a fact when these poor children, babies are born from first cousins, that they have a double the chance of having a birthing defect. So as much as it is changing, it also isn't. And I think that's why Alison's piece is amazing, because it raises awareness that there is a second life to it. There is an opportunity in which here that we can actually address these issues, and we don't have... It's not Islamophobic to say these issues, because there's plenty of people, I would argue, in the Islamic community that article will help and get them to speak out and make a difference. So I think her piece is incredible, and it's really important that we're not afraid to say these things. The problem is now, the moment you talk about Anglophobia, the moment you talk about what I've just discussed, the first word people will say to you is, you're being Islamophobic. And I think that's unfair. I think it shuts the discussion down, and it doesn't allow us to talk about what we talked about earlier in terms of people burning down the Union Jack, drawing attention to the fact that white boys at school are struggling and are continuing to struggle. It doesn't highlight the fact that as a country, we're seeing large groups of people refusing to integrate into British society.
That's a good point for us to pass it back over to Aisha, I think. Do you want to come back on that, a kind of refusal to integrate, perhaps?
Let me just remind Sunil that I was talking about cousin marriages 20 years ago. I was actually campaigning against cousin marriages. I was campaigning for more Muslim women to have access to education, to go to college, to be allowed to learn the language of our homeland. Everything that you've mentioned has already been covered, and I'm so happy to say that the younger generation have taken it on board. They've realised, they've seen for themselves, they've seen siblings born with disabilities, they've seen uncles and aunties go through abusive marriages, and they're saying, no, we're not going to do this. I think what I find offensive about Alison's article is that she's taking the community...
Oh, I think we might have lost Aisha, unfortunately. That's a real shame. OK, all right. Well, look, thank you very much. It was about time to wrap anyway, unfortunately, but there we go. CEO of Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, Sunil Sharma, and human rights activist Aisha Ali Khan. Certainly a robust debate, that, wasn't it? Well, look, who do you agree with? Is Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson right to say that we should stop being scared of Islamophobia, start worrying more about Anglophobia? Joe on X says, youngsters are ashamed to be British now, but if you point that out, you're just called a racist. Anglophobia is a big problem. I think it's that, well, it is, that aspect of whether or not it is shameful to be British. That's certainly one thing that I'm concerned about. Alex on X says, Islamophobia accusations are just thrown around by politicians to avoid dealing with the actual issues. Dave says, no, because Anglophobia doesn't exist. Compared to all the other issues, it's just not a problem. OK, Dave's view then. Like, look, your verdict is in. 81% of you agree that Alison Pearson is right, that we should stop being scared of Islamophobia, start worrying about Anglophobia. 19% of you say she is not correct. I wonder if we could just do both, though. You know, really there? But there we go. Right, coming up, a sensational story that you will not want to miss. A dominatrix who partied with Prince Harry in his infamous Las Vegas trip is threatening to share nude snaps of the Duke on OnlyFans. Former BBC Royal correspondent Michael Cole gets stuck into that, and whether the Princess of Wales' uncle Gary Goldsmith is embarrassing his niece and the royal family with his latest Big Brother shenanigans. If you've not seen him yet, we'll show them to you. But next, it was the jumbo jet that disappeared without a trace over the Indian Ocean that's left the world scratching its chin for 10 years now. So what really did happen? to Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. Aviation journalist Jeff Wise has been investigating the mystery. He joins me and he says he's got some bombshell new leads that could finally solve this puzzle. You won't want to miss it.
Hi there and welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Yeah, there was some warm, sunny spells during Wednesday, but for many over the next 24 hours it is going to be cloudy with an increased chance of showers developing through Thursday. We've got high pressure to the east. That's bringing a lot of low cloud into eastern parts. We keep the clear spells overnight in the south and the west. Where we do have the clear spells, there'll be a touch of frost and some fog patches forming. A few showers continuing across parts of Cornwall as well. Otherwise, many places will be dry. And we start the day with a bit of a chill in the air, certainly where we've got those frost and fog pockets in the west. But it will soon warm up. The cloud will lift as well, and actually with the rising cloud, it's going to be a brighter day across northeastern parts of the UK. Still a lot of cloud, and that cloud bubbling up, some sharp showers will develop, particularly through the Midlands, East Wales, into later on parts of northern England. Away from the showers, though, plenty of dry and bright weather, best of the sunshine in the west and southwest, highs of 12 or 13 Celsius, although still a chill in the east. And it's going to be increasingly breezy through Thursday and into Friday. That breeze coming from the east will make it feel on the cold side, but increasingly sunny spells will develop in the south on Friday. And it's going to be largely dry. Same can't be said for the weekend. Increasingly spells of showery rain will move north across the country. 8 Celsius in the north, 12 further south.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, so describe the contents of the letter for us, because it is quite strongly worded, isn't it? And it suggests that your property is empty. And what do they suggest it's going to be used for?
They say, as part of this process, Northamptonshire Council is identifying empty properties and sites within the area, with the aim of encouraging owners to bring premises back into use or to find alternative options for derelict sites. The resettlement team in Northamptonshire Council supports asylum seekers and refugees across 3 different projects: Homes for Ukraine, Afghan resettlement and asylum dispersal. At present, we are seeing a considerable increase in positive immigration decisions being made in favour of asylum seekers. So basically, they're wanting accommodation. But who goes around and assesses whether these properties are lived in or they are actually empty?
Clearly, Ted, no one had bothered to come and look at your house at all, had they?
What do you want now? Because clearly you are both very shaken by this letter, and that letter that you've received in response has not gone far enough. Do you want an apology? What more do you want to see?
Well, she said here that she's, I sincerely apologise, this Lindsay Bellchambers, but I don't see, there was no explanation as to how they've come to say this property was empty, whether it was disused, whether it was unkempt, or what. If you go back through the history of the property, it's not been empty.
Welcome back. Coming up, the dominatrix who partied with Prince Harry on his infamous Las Vegas trip is about to share nude pictures of the Duke, apparently. But first, this is a story that captivated the world. It still does. The disappearance of Malaysian Airways flight MH370 on March the 8th, 2014, would go on to become one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time.
And we have breaking news right now. Malaysia Airlines confirms it has lost contact with a plane carrying 227 passengers and 12
6:30 in the morning local time in Beijing. At this stage, a very sketchy detail.
Just to remind you of what we're finding out. The flight number is MH370. It was
This Boeing 77 seems to have vanished into thin air.
Well, the flight bound for Beijing disappeared somewhere over the Indian Ocean, apparently. But after a 3-year search, wreckage of the plane was never really found. 10 years on, the disappearance of MH370 has fueled wild conspiracy theories, including internet speculation that the flight might have been consumed by a black hole. So, what happened to MH370? I'm joined now by the aviation journalist and co-host of the Deep Dive MH370 podcast, Jeff Wise. Jeff, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. So, look, what happened?
That is the burning question. I mean, I can't believe it's been 10 years and here we are still with no idea really what happened to this plane. It is the greatest aviation mystery, I would say. And the authorities just really don't have answers for us. They spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars looking for this plane. They had a theory for where it went, but when they searched the ocean, the seabed there, it wasn't there. And they frankly don't have a good explanation for why that is.
Yeah, a lot of people have speculated that it might have even been shot down.
Well, we know that a plane was shot down 4 months later, MH17, of course. And there has been, well, look, there have been all kinds of theories kind of, listen, we live in an age where anybody can say anything and some sort of rather crazy things get traction. Listen, it's a complicated technical case. When you really dig into it seriously, it takes a lot of attention and a lot of care. It has a lot of math, it has a lot of science and technology, but I think it deserves the attention that is required to really dig deep into it. That's why I have this podcast where every week we slice thinly through another aspect of the case to try to piece together what might have happened to it. And when you do that, when you take that time and attention, you find that a lot of these rather silly ideas fall away pretty quickly, and you're left with really two possibilities. Somebody took this plane, somebody turned the electronics off and in some cases back on again and absconded with the plane. And what and how we explain that is quite a tale.
Well, go on. So, I mean, people thought maybe the pilot committed one of the greatest acts of mass murder that the world has ever seen, or wasn't there some issue with the flight simulator in his own home where they thought he'd chased the route? His family absolutely deny it. There didn't appear to be any indication that he was that kind of person, I suppose, although, you know, quite hard to tell, I think. So go on. What was your most compelling theory then?
Well, there's two possibilities. Looking at the data that was sent by an automatic satellite communication system on board the plane, the Inmarsat data, tells us that the plane either went north or went south. Now, what has become more and more apparent is that this plane had a cybersecurity vulnerability. And this is something that at the time, nobody was really thinking about. You know, aviation has been historically very concerned with safety. That means making sure that things don't break, making sure that planes don't collide. There's been very little attention paid to security, meaning how do you make sure that malevolent attackers don't get into your system? And so when the 777 was built in the 90s, there was no passwords, no security. There's an unlocked hatch into the electronics bay.
So someone could have hacked this plane, you think? Someone could have hacked it?
So, so tomorrow in the latest edition of the podcast that we're releasing, I don't want to give too much away, but I think people should tune in to Deep Dive MH370 because we have an interview with a very well-respected cybersecurity professor who deals especially with aviation. And he says that, you know, this system is wide open. If you get into that electronics bay, it's like getting on an internet with no passwords.
Really? That is fascinating. But, I mean, I suppose the thing would be, what would the motivation be then? Unless you were going to land that plane somewhere and sell it for parts or something, why would someone want to just hack it and crash it into the ocean?
Well, it's a complicated and rather technical story. What we have to look at, before we can really deal with motives, we have to understand what happened. You know, I like to say that if you find a bunch of bodies underneath my house, and there's all these dead bodies buried in shallow graves in my basement, you don't start by saying, you know, why did he do it? You just sort of like arrest me and throw me in jail. You know, it's the fact of what happened have to come before we start worrying about motives. And so what we really need to do is solve the case first, look at the possibilities. Now, the important thing to know about this case is that the authorities looked in the seabed. It wasn't there. They can't explain why. We have to expand our possible range of explanations and look at things, because some of the assumptions the authorities made when they started to look, when they defined the search area, must have been wrong.
Yeah, OK, all right, look, Jeff, thank you very, very much. Jeff Wise there, who is a journalist and a co-host of a podcast about MH370. And look, hey, if it was hacked, and if indeed our aircraft are hackable, I'm not for 1 second saying they are, by the way, if they are there, then, of course, it would be interesting to cover that up, wouldn't it? Because otherwise people will get this massive fear of flying. It's $1 billion industry, etc., etc. Anyway, go and check out his podcast and see what he says. Now, it's time for the latest Great British Giveaway. Yeah, there we go. I got there in the end. It's a good job it's not a flight, isn't it? Anyway, your chance to win £12,345 in cash and a whole host of seasonal treats. Here's how it could be yours.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck. Now, coming up, I'm joined by one of the mooted front-runners to become the next Conservative Party leader as she gives her first reaction to Jeremy Hunt's spring budget today.
I'll say it, you know, we've got the highest tax burden in 70 years. That is a fact. Taxes are too high. Taxes have been going up.
Yes, but she also talks tough on grooming gangs and on Shamima Begum, so stay tuned to find out what she has to say about both of those issues. But next, a dominatrix is threatening to publish nude photographs of Prince Harry on the internet from his infamous Las Vegas bender. Former BBC Royal correspondent Michael Cole joins me live to analyse these potentially damaging issues looming for the Duke and the behaviour of the Princess of Wales' uncle Gary Goldsmith as he makes viewers squirm on Big Brother. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do.
Or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other pay-per-review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Well, coming up at 10 p.m, I bring you a post-budget exclusive with Priti Patel. But first, it's time for the Royal Dispatch. Prince Harry thought that he'd found peace over in the States, but an American dominatrix and OnlyFans star, Carrie Royale, is threatening to sell never-seen-before pictures of the Duke naked at an infamous Las Vegas party back in 2012. She told The Sun, "I never released these pictures before out of respect. Now, it doesn't matter. He's a bloody idiot." Her words, obviously, not ours. You may remember the headlines back in 2012 after a drunken Duke was pictured playing naked billiards and forced to fly back to Britain in disgrace. Well, I'm delighted to welcome former royal correspondent for the BBC, Michael Cole, onto the show now. Michael, thank you very much. Is this another example of Harry's past coming back to haunt him?
Good evening, Patrick. What happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, or so they say, but not on this occasion. We're going back here to 2012, so nearly 12 years ago. And Carrie, now 52, was 40 at the time. She's what is known as a dominatrix. I hope I've pronounced that right, whatever that is. She went into his suite or room at the Wynn Hotel. There were some strippers there. A game called Strip Billiards was being played. And she took these photographs, as you just explained. And now Carrie plans to exhibit these online and charge people to see them, to see effectively the crown jewels, I suppose. And she expects to make $1 million out of this. I'm afraid I have to tell Carrie there is a design fault in her plan, because she would have to get the permission of the person pictured for this website to allow the pictures to go up. And I cannot think for a minute that Prince Harry, tucked away in California, is going to go over to Las Vegas and say, with my blessing, put these photographs online. But I think it's worth saying this slightly more seriously, Patrick. That was at a time when Harry was falling out of nightclubs drunk and wearing Nazi uniforms. And, you know, in that time, his older brother didn't distance himself from him. He didn't criticize him publicly. He didn't disown him. He stayed loyal to him, which may be perhaps something for Harry to think about as he spends a lot of his time knocking spots off his family.
No, indeed. And I'll be honest with you as well, if this was another way around, I mean, this is essentially blackmail, isn't it? And if indeed he is naked, I mean, you know, you can't go around doing things like that. You absolutely can't go around just releasing naked. I mean, there are laws against this.
Yeah, well, I actually know Steve Wynn, who, the hotel, that's his hotel, the Wynn Hotel. He's probably the most powerful man in Las Vegas. I can't imagine that he would have smiled upon this or allowed it or sanctioned it had it been going on. But it was at that time maybe the lowest point in Prince Harry's life. There he's coming out of the High Court after another one of his cases, Prince of litigation, either winning or losing, but certainly carrying on. It's a very, very sad affair. I'm sure that he will be looking at it closely. Maybe in America he can get an injunction to stop it. But, you know, these things do come back and haunt you. And at that time, he was in a very, very poor state. I think the army made a man out of him. And that was probably the highest point when he became the happy prince before his marriage.
All right, OK. Now, look, the Princess of Wales' controversial uncle Gary Goldsmith has entered the Celebrity Big Brother house this week. He has a prediction for Prince Harry's future.
It's really sad because, I mean,
at some point, I think he's going to come back and be part of the gang. Or he might need to.
Will he?
And it's, yeah, but I think we're a very forgiving nature. I think everyone would give him a chance
It would be
again.
nice if he did.
So Uncle Gary thinks Harry's coming back at some point.
Patrick, let me just say that there are 2 chances of Prince Harry coming back to this country and being integrated in the royal family. In the magic words of Muhammad Ali, in a completely different context, there are 2 chances, slim and none. He's going to have to eat a humble pie about the size of Buckingham Palace behind your head, and he's going to have to grovel, I think, to his brother and to his sister-in-law. And of course, there we have Uncle Gary. He hasn't been hired to go to the Big Brother house because of his sparkling personality or repartee and sophisticated conversation. He's been invited because he's the uncle of the woman who will, in all probability, be the next queen. And they got him there because they want him to say indiscreet things. And to be slightly serious about it, he has, of course, said some disobliging things about Harry and Meghan in the past, our favourite people. But that does not help the Princess of Wales, because if you think about it, and you sometimes ought to look, and we all ought to look, during the whole of this saga with the Sussexes, Kate, Princess of Wales, has not said one single word in their disfavour. She hasn't criticised them, she hasn't reacted, she's maintained fantastic dignity and poise, and that's to be hugely congratulated. And now, at a time when she's recovering, and we do hope, collectively we all hope she's getting better very, very soon. The last thing she wants is Gabby Gary in the Big Brother house pontificating on affairs that are nothing really to do with him.
Well, exactly. This is the thing, isn't it? But anyway, look, Michael, thank you very much. That's Michael Cole there. Oh, fantastic royal correspondent. Good stuff. Now, look, coming up, I am joined by one of the top frontrunners to become the next Conservative Party leader, as she gives her first reaction to Jeremy Hunt's spring budget today.
I'll say it, you know, we've got the highest tax burden in 70 years. That is a fact. Taxes are too high. Taxes have been going up.
She covers quite a few bases. She's talking about whether or not Hunt got it right. She mentions the grooming gang special that we did yesterday. Would she deport people who are from foreign countries, who come here and are members of grooming gangs? And as the United Nations wades in again, saying that Shamima Begum should come back to Britain, I asked Priti Patel, a former Home Secretary, what she knows about Begum that is keeping her away. It's Patrick Christys tonight on GB News.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Yeah, there was some warm, sunny spells during Wednesday, but for many over the next 24 hours, it is going to be cloudy with an increased chance of showers developing through Thursday. We've got high pressure to the east. That's bringing a lot of low cloud into eastern parts. We keep the clear spells overnight in the south and the west. Where we do have the clear spells, there'll be a touch of frost and some fog patches forming. A few showers continuing across parts of Cornwall as well. Otherwise, many places will be dry. And we start the day with a bit of a chill in the air, certainly where we've got those frost and fog pockets in the west. But it will soon warm up. The cloud will lift as well, and actually with the rising cloud, it's going to be a brighter day across northeastern parts of the UK. Still a lot of cloud, and that cloud bubbling up, some sharp showers will develop, particularly through the Midlands, East Wales, into later on parts of northern England. Away from the showers, though, plenty of dry and bright weather. Best of the sunshine in the west and southwest. Highs of 12 or 13 Celsius, although still a chill in the east. And it's going to be increasingly breezy through Thursday and into Friday. That breeze coming from the east will make it feel on the cold side, but increasingly sunny spells will develop in the south on Friday. And it's going to be largely dry. Same can't be said for the weekend. Increasingly spells of showery rain will move north across the country. 8 Celsius in the north, 12 further south.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
However, these people should be incarcerated for the crimes that they committed, and they should not be allowed back in the community. End of story.
Priti Patel tees off on grooming gangs, plus she explains why Begum is not coming back. And
I'll say it, we've got the highest tax burden in 70 years. That is a fact. Taxes are too high. Taxes have been going up.
Does Priti back Hunt's budget? Also,
Keir Starmer needs to shed a few pounds, and that would be an improvement.
Keir Starmer isn't too fat to rule, is he? He could become a vegan, though.
What puts me off Labour a little bit is the fact that Starmer is a vegetarian but not a vegan.
I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you today, with editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, landlord and activist Adam Brooks, and journalist Rebecca Reid. Oh, and this happened.
Why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers, and really, why don't you f*** off? How about that?
Get ready, Britain, here we go. An exclusive with the woman tipped by many to be the next Conservative leader. Stay tuned.
And the top story even this hour. Today, the Chancellor unveiled his spring budget, cutting personal taxes to their lowest point in almost half a century. The key focus of the pre-election budget was a 2p reduction in the pound in national insurance. But figures suggest expected rises in council tax will wipe out any benefits felt by households. Speaking after his statement in the House of Commons, Jeremy Hunt said his budget marks a big reduction in the tax bill for ordinary families.
What you see is that after a 4 percentage points cut in national insurance, there is a big reduction in the tax bill for ordinary families. And that is because the economy's turned a corner. We've stuck to the plan we have. The forecasts are much more optimistic for the economy going forward. And as Conservatives, we believe that if we bring down the tax burden, that will fire up the economy, create more jobs, more money for public services like the NHS.
Well, the Science Secretary is facing calls to quit after taxpayers had to cover her £15,000 bill in damages and legal fees following her false accusations that she made about an academic. Michelle Donnellan, who has now retracted her comments, which accused Professor Kate Sang of supporting the terror group Hamas, after investigation found the claims were baseless. Labour says Ms Donnellan's comments were a new low in government standards. And to the United States now, where Nikki Haley has ended her long-shot challenge against the former president, Donald Trump, to become the Republican candidate for president. The former governor of South Carolina dropped out after the former president beat her in 14 out of 15 contests on Super Tuesday. Just as Haley was conceding the race, Trump invited her supporters to join him and called upon Joe Biden to debate him in a post on his Truth Social platform. The presidential race now looks set to be a Trump-Biden rematch in November's US election. Let's bring you an update on that fire in East London, which has been raging since just after 4 o'clock. We know that emergency services are still working into the night, battling that blaze at the police station in Forest Gate in East London, where the roof of the building is, we understand, completely alight. If you're watching on television, you can see the latest pictures coming to us. We understand 35 fire appliances there, 175 firefighters from 3 separate brigades attending the scene of that blaze. The roof of the police station completely alight at the moment. London Fire Brigade is urging residents in the area to avoid the area and keep windows and doors closed. For the very latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. Now, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt came with no rabbit when he delivered his budget today. Not a sausage, nothing at all. Every major measure had already been briefed to the press, and the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, had his tail up with this response.
There we have it, the last desperate act of a party that has failed. Britain in recession, the national credit card maxed out, and despite the measures today, the highest tax burden for 70 years. The first Parliament since records began to see living standards fall, confirmed by this budget today. That is their record. It is still their record. Give with one hand and take even more with the other. And nothing they do between now and the election will change that.
Jeremy Hunt did make a fat joke about Keir Starmer in the light of what Mandelson said. He also went off Angela Rayner on the old capital gains tax front, and she did not like that. But the first thing out of his mouth was about unveiling a statue to Muslim war heroes, which left many people scratching their head, especially how it costs £1 million. But it's time now for my exclusive interview with former Home Secretary Priti Patel. Now, Starmer says that her party is doomed. I started by asking her whether or not today's budget can actually win the Tories the next election.
I think that's the wrong question to ask right now, for very good reasons. The budget has only been announced today. And, Patrick, I've mentioned to you previously, I've been a Treasury Minister before. Budgets are difficult things to do because it's a balancing act. It's a fiscal balancing act. And I think we have to look at the measures that have been announced today and what it actually means to, you know, your viewers, basically, hard-working families across the country. And they're going to be digesting the budget tonight when they watch your programme and watch the news and everything else. And I think we then have to step back and actually look at what does it mean for them. And there are some good measures. We can talk about lots of measures and, you know, direction of travel. This budget, in my view, has been signalling quite a few things, basically. Yes, lower taxes in terms of employment taxes, so national insurance. I think more will come. I suspect there'll be another fiscal event sometime this year. And then you could ask the question after that one, is it going to win the election?
That implies that you think it's not going to be a May election, then?
I don't think there will be a May election. I really don't. And, you know, I could be called out on this in the next 2 weeks, so be it. But I think, look, Jeremy Hunt was very clear in the budget today, and his tone, you know, it's all in the tone and the presentation. You know, times are difficult. We have economic challenges. We have structural issues. You know, I was in the Treasury back in 2014. I remember what coalition government was like post-financial crisis. Currently, we're still reeling the effects of COVID, the Ukraine conflict, global inflation. Inflation is still sticky, but thankfully the projections are that inflation is going to continue to come down. That's a great thing. That is a really good thing.
I know, yeah, I do know a lot of our viewers who are very keen to see something done about inheritance tax, and there wasn't...
Sure, well, no, it's a costly thing to do, you know, so there are lots of tax measures that I would personally like to see, you know, the changes would have come in. Your viewers will have a whole shopping list, I've got no doubt about that. But don't forget, these are costly measures. So inheritance tax being one example, I mean, the costs are very high, but also we have to look at, I say we, the Treasury, our ministers in government would look at, well, who benefits from that? You know, does everyone benefit, or is it a certain section of the population that benefits?
Do you think they're a bit too afraid of that, though? This idea that they get a headline in The Guardian that says, look, you've given a tax break for the rich.
No, I don't, actually. In all fairness, I don't. I think it's really important within the context of where we are, and I'll say it, you know, we've got the highest tax burden in 70 years. That is a fact. Taxes are too high. Taxes have been going up. On that basis, it's far more equitable to bring taxes down for working people and working families. That's why I'm very pro the national insurance cut. By the way, I think this government will be the government that will literally pave the way for the abolition of national insurance. In the past, I've spoken about, you know, even merging national insurance and income tax. That is complicated, but that could have been another way forward. But the fact that we've had a second national insurance cut tells me that they are signalling for further reductions and the potential abolition of it. And again, working people benefits from that. And the other point to make about national insurance is that, you know, removing the disincentives for work, that's where this government is at. And I think that's commendable, and I think Jeremy Hunt should take some credit for that.
Well, we've definitely got to get more people into work. What about the non-dom stuff, though? People have accused you of stealing Labour's policy. Initially, they're saying it's going to raise about £3 billion a year. The concern will be that people will just leave, and that also, apparently, in 2022... Jeremy Hunt himself said it would cost us £8 billion.
So that's a fact. You know, you can't, once you've said things like that, you can't unsay it, right? But don't forget, that £8 billion would have been based on economic data at the time. Data shifts, OBR forecasts change a lot, and the margin of error is very high. I mean, it's a choice the government has made. You know, they're going to do it, and you could argue the woes, the rights and wrongs of it.
Do you agree with it?
So I think we have to see what it now means, basically, see the reaction to it. Historically, I'll be very candid, you know, I love London, I love the city of London. You know, I was born in London and brought up in and around London and the South East. I think we've been a global financial hub. We've been very attractive to foreign direct investment, and obviously people from overseas come in here.
You think it might cost us?
I don't know. I don't know. And I say that because you've got to remember, we're competing now in a totally different world. There are other big international hubs. We need to do much more here to attract capital finance, you know, foreign direct investment. London is incredibly attractive. Whatever people say, people want to come here, live here, work here, and also come and shop here. You know, look at London. It is a beautiful city. But at the same time, we know that a lot of international people have aired their concerns around this. So I don't want to be too judgmental. You know, I want our city, our capital city, to thrive, be so successful, our country to be successful. But we will have to wait and see in terms of what the overall
And he has nicked Labour's policy here, hasn't he?
Well, he's adopted it. I won't say nicked it. I think he's adopted it. They've looked at it, and there's no harm in that. There is no harm in it. But at the end of the day, I'm a practical person. I'm only interested in the practicalities of it, if it's going to work, if it's going to deliver, and, you know, what it also means for the Treasury coffers as well. This is really important because we're spending so much public money. Public spending is 1.2 trillion.
Yeah.
It's going up. The size of the state, I'm very vocal about this. Public spending is high. The size of the state is very high. People like me want to see lower taxes, but I'm a realist. You only get lower taxes when you do much more in terms of curtailing public spending, and that means hard choices.
Stay tuned for Priti Patel's views on grooming gangs and Shamima Begum, but I'm going to bring in now the former Labour MP, Ivor Kaplan. Ivor, thank you very, very much. Look, you must be loving this. We've got rich people paying more tax and massive public spending.
Well, I just thought that today what we actually saw was not much, really, in terms of the budget. I was pretty disappointed. And I think one of the things that Priti made in her comments just then, we could talk about in reality. So, for instance, inheritance tax needs a proper overhaul. You can't just play with it. And I've said this before on GB News. We need to have people who are prepared to think over the whole concept of inheritance tax and what might happen. What about the business rates? This was something that the Tory government had said would happen to all businesses who, in the COVID years, had to deal with difficult business rates in that time. This is a part of the hospitality area which passionately needs some form of business rates, relook. So there's lots and lots of things there. So apart from the obvious things of the non-doms being stolen by Jeremy Hunt, I think there is a lot for Labour to look at in the next few years, starting with the general election, whenever that comes.
I suppose what he's done, though, is trying to show that the Tories can be trusted with the economy, and that, unfortunately for you, is the great unknown with Labour, isn't it?
It's always the great unknown in any general election. We've all been through that, and people say that to you. But I think at the moment, what that looks like for the Conservative Party is pretty simple. It looks very similar to what happened, I don't know, a few months ago it was. And it's just, gone back another 2 and 2 pence to try and help.
Are Labour going to reduce public spending, though? This is an issue, right? Are Labour going to reduce public spending? The highest tax burden since World War II.
Yeah. So Labour is going to have to look at the whole perspective. This is what I'm trying to say, and I've tried so many times to say this. I know Rachel Reeves has also tried to say this. We've got to look at it in a much wider situation than we've done normally. Normally, we just look at things in very small areas, and I think it's time for a big relook at how these matters are taken on, and
it's not policy, though, is it?
The Treasury needs to be held to account on that. Sorry, Patrick.
Sorry, just quickly, with respect, that's not a policy in there, is there? It's just having a look at things.
No, well, what I would like to see is a wide policy on all these matters, particularly, as I've said earlier, on inheritance tax and things like this, where we keep arguing about it, and yet lots of people like me say, well, why can't we have a proper organised relook at inheritance tax? And then everyone says, oh, no, because that does this. We need to look at all these areas in real terms for the Treasury and for what can take the United Kingdom forward under a Labour government.
All right. And you don't think Labour have already looked at that?
I'm sure we have. And what will be interesting is how and when this comes out.
Right. All right. Well, we'll wait with bated breath, to be honest with you, Ivor. But look, thank you very much. Look, massive pleasure for you coming on, especially this time of night. Massively appreciated. Right. OK. Well, what do you make of all of that? That was former Labour MP Ivor Kaplan. Right. Loads still to come. More Priti Patel. I think on some meatier issues, actually, because she is going to be talking, well, quite a lot, actually, about whether or not the members of a grooming gang who are indeed refugees should be deported. And also, as well, she hits back at the United Nations over their Shamima Begum ruling. Here's a little bit of that Priti Patel story for you.
However, these people should be incarcerated for the crimes that they committed, and they should not be allowed back in the community. End of story.
Yes, all right. Look, stay tuned for more Priti.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. It's Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News. And it is time now for the second part of my exclusive interview with former Home Secretary Priti Patel. We covered a lot of ground, including whether Shamima Begum should return to the UK. The United Nations certainly thinks so. And my report last night on the latest grooming gang scandal. But I started by asking her about the country's soaring immigration figures. 3 times at the dispatch box that the Treasury couldn't rely on mass immigration. Yeah. Quite untimely, the OBR has then increased the migration prediction from 245,000 in the medium term to 315,000. Yes. But we are addicted to mass migration.
So we are. I think we should be absolutely honest about this. And even when I was in government, you know, I tried to bring in measures, you know, and we actually, the language I use was almost Treasury language, like we had automatic levers to basically say, you know, that's it, we've reached a level of migration that's enough. This is legal migration, by the way. Yes, yes. Differentiating between illegal and illegal. And on legal migration, having those automatic measures means the caps. You introduce caps. We could have brought in a cap. In fact, when I left the Home Office back in September 2022, we put a programme in place for the new Home Secretary to basically even come to Parliament, look at caps, bring in proper measures. I say proper measures, measures to say that in the following sectors, we have, you know, we've filled almost quotas, basically. We've had enough people come in, and therefore there's more that we need to do. But, Patrick, the real challenge here is, and I say this, you know, with my background as an economist as well, is that we don't have a labour market strategy for this country, and I've been going on about this even when I was in government. We must have a labour market strategy because too many sectors in our economy rely, as you have said, on more migration and actually, in some quarters, unskilled migration, which is a no-no. We should not be enabling that to happen. We should be doing much more. Employers should be paying people properly, and we should have proper incentives for them to train more people. And that's the rebalancing that we need in our labour market. And I say this for very good reasons. While we've got a tight labour market right now, we've also had high levels of inflation.
Yep.
And the worst thing that could possibly happen is that inflation starts going up and unemployment goes up, you know, domestically. And we cannot have that. We've got to do much more with our domestic population to invest in them in the long term, not in the short term, long term. And that means skills, proper employment programmes and proper employment training.
Yeah, I mean, it also does have a big impact on British culture as well, I know, and on our society as a whole, doesn't it? And I wonder if whether or not that's something that should be factored in a little bit. Look, I've got to ask you as well about a couple of things here. I did a story last night that went absolutely massive on social media, which was about... It was a grooming gang and it was refugees involved. And there's no talk of deporting these people. I've got to ask, with your former Home Secretary cap on, would you be looking to deport these people?
So we were, and we did. So I think, you know, I didn't see your report, so there were probably some very specific cases.
They were Syrians, so it's...
So let's be very clear about this, because, quite frankly, I've been there, I've seen how difficult it is. Number one, these are foreign national offenders, they are criminals, and they have caused terrible harm to individuals. They are in the criminal justice system. They should be removed. You just said they're Syrians. So on that basis, because of the issue with Syria, it will be very difficult to actually remove them from the country because, you know, conflict in Syria, etc. However, these people should be incarcerated for the crimes that they committed, and they should not be allowed back in the community. End of story. I have had cases, in fact, from Rotherham in the past, and to be fair, the grooming gang situation there was terrible. There's a lot of work, actually, all credit to agencies, brilliant work taking place. These were British people that were involved in grooming, and yet they were allowed to stay in the community. There were some that we actually removed back to Pakistan, for example, and there were cases where we were constantly in the courts, and we were thwarting those cases as well, which is really important, based on the criminal evidence and the abuse and the harm that they cause to the individuals. So we must stop at nothing. We must stop at absolutely nothing to, A, make sure these people not only are prosecuted, put behind bars, but never allowed back in the community. And also, when they're foreign national offenders, we must do everything to remove them.
OK, and very, very quickly, Shamima Begum, the UN has said that she was trafficked and they've got this credible evidence. There's talk about her coming back in the country. Every single person in government says, if you knew what we knew, you wouldn't let her back in.
That's absolutely clear. The UN are wrong on this, basically, and the UN should not be getting involved in what is a very domestic case for the United Kingdom. You know, every Home Secretary, my predecessors, you know, and those, I guess, that have followed me since have been very clear on this. That case is closed as far as we're concerned, and the evidence against her is so substantial.
Well, Dame Priti Patel there. Let's get the instant reaction now from my panel. We've got editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Adam, she says that we should be deporting foreign-born members of grooming gangs.
I think if you asked members of the public out in the high street or shopping centres or the pubs, 90% of people would say these grooming gangs or these asylum seekers that are committing crimes here should be deported. But I think it's pretty clear that a Conservative government under Rishi Sunak will not deport these people. He hasn't got the balls to do that. For whatever reason, they won't do it. But, you know, I believe if someone like Priti Patel was Prime Minister, that she would be forcing that and we'd have more of a chance. But at the moment, I've lost all faith in this government doing what the people actually expect them to do and putting public safety first.
Well, it's just, we've seen that even if they can get them on the planes, these like wokies chuck them off the planes. I mean, there's been that Jamaican case a couple of years ago where they didn't realise he was a sort of gun-toting murderer, drug dealer, and they kind of got him off the plane. They all cheered, and it was in the Guardian. I mean, it's very hard to get people
They got
deported.
virtue points for doing that.
They got virtue points. They had no idea. They hadn't even worked out what he did to get him deported.
Well, what do you make of this? I mean, we covered this grooming gang issue yesterday. It's gone absolutely viral online. And The remarkable thing is we went to the Home Office who said, are you actually at any point planning on deporting this lot? They initially said it's not really our responsibility, and we were like, well, hang on a minute, maybe that explains a lot if you don't think it's your responsibility to deport people. They went to the Ministry of Justice, they referred us back to the Home Office, and then the Home Office said to us, well, maybe we will. Do you think they should?
I wouldn't be deporting them on the basis that I think that if you are a member of a grooming gang, you need to go to prison and you need to serve time for that. But the problem is that, generally speaking, what people object to is having them in the prison system here and paying for them here. Now, if you want to talk about people serving a 20-year sentence for what they did and them being deported, that 20 years should give you time to get your house in order to make sure that happens. But what I don't like is when people say deport them immediately, because we have no way of guaranteeing they will get off a plane and then be punished for what they did. They will just be allowed to run off and do it to other little girls somewhere else.
Yeah, well, as indeed they almost definitely would, actually. Look, we're going to be talking in more detail, because I know a lot of you have got very strong views on the actual budget. We're going to be talking about that a bit later on, a couple of the key themes here. But I just want to introduce you to the fray. Coming up, was this fat jibe from the Chancellor to Sir Keir Starmer out of order today, or was it a little bit of fun?
I know he's been taking advice from Lord Mandelson, who yesterday rather uncharitably said he needed to shed a few pounds. If he wants to join me on my marathon training, he's most welcome as well.
OK, I'm going to get my panel's take on that when we get stuck into more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages in my press pack. Was that fat shaming? And a couple of other viral clips for you. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Yeah, there was some warm, sunny spells during Wednesday, but for many over the next 24 hours, it is going to be cloudy with an increased chance of showers developing through Thursday. We've got high pressure to the east. That's bringing a lot of low cloud into eastern parts. We keep the clear spells overnight in the south and the west. Where we do have the clear spells, there'll be a touch of frost and some fog patches forming. A few showers continuing across parts of Cornwall as well. Otherwise, many places will be dry. And we start the day with a bit of a chill in the air, certainly where we've got those frost and fog pockets in the west. But it will soon warm up. The cloud will lift as well, and actually with the rising cloud, it's going to be a brighter day across northeastern parts of the UK. Still a lot of cloud, and that cloud bubbling up, some sharp showers will develop, particularly through the Midlands, East Wales, into later on parts of northern England. Away from the showers, though, plenty of dry and bright weather, best of the sunshine in the west and southwest, highs of 12 or 13 Celsius, although still a chill in the east. And it's going to be increasingly breezy through Thursday and into Friday. That breeze coming from the east will make it feel on the cold side, but increasingly sunny spells will develop in the south on Friday, and it's going to be largely dry. Same can't be said for the weekend. Increasingly spells of showery rain will move north across the country, 8 Celsius in the north, 12 further south.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
All right, it is time now for your front pages. Let's do it. OK, we've got the Metro first. Cut and run, Hunt's election budget battle plan. So they've gone £450 giveaway as poll looms. They talk about 2p on the national insurance for 27 million child benefit help. So anyway, we go to the Independent. They go 2 pence, too little, too late. Hunt bets on national insurance cut to revive the Tories. I tell you what, it'll be the only thing everyone's talking about down the pub tonight, won't it? That 2p. Flipping out, Jeremy. Right. The Eye. Labour rules out taxing wealthy to avoid £20 billion cuts. Interesting, this. So Labour won't try to squeeze high earners to plug the £20 billion black hole in Britain's public spending if the party does win power. My initial takeaway from this is, well, they've U-turned on everything else, so why wouldn't they U-turn on this? But The Guardian, a last desperate act. Tax at highest level since 1948. Starmer condemns budget as a reflection of the failed Tory party. They also have a point here at the bottom, which is that Nikki Haley has dropped out of the presidential race in the US, which means that basically it's Trump versus Biden. So there we go. The Times, we're turning the corner. Hunt says national insurance cuts will fuel growth. He'll seek to abolish an unfair tax. They've also got it at a glance here. National insurance, child benefit, inflation, non-doms and productivity being the key takeaways. The Sun have gone for something completely different. Harry's pants sell for £250,000 and Hunt has given us a few knicker too. Whee. Exclusive strip party undies. So party girl Carrie Royale, I'm assuming not a real name, boasted last night that she has flogged a pair of Prince Harry's pants for nearly £200,000. Be interesting to see whether or not they did a how would you prove it's Harry's pants? DNA test? I don't know. There we go. Anyway, now joining me is my press pack. Of course, I am joined by the ever-fabulous editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. I've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Should he have just cut inheritance tax, Charlotte?
I think he should have done, and I think The Guardian said that this was his last desperate act. I think that will be his last desperate act. I think that, there could be another fiscal event to come, and then he should drop that one, and it would be great, and I'd definitely vote for that.
You would definitely vote for this. This is when we're in the territory now of actually... Because, I'm convinced no one would vote for this budget. This budget was about there not being a catastrophe in it. There wasn't a catastrophe in it. It was dull man delivers dull budget.
I think it put voters off. I know Conservative voters that are disgusted by today's budget. At the end of the day, energy bills have gone up, our food's gone up, petrol's gone up, what else has gone up? Car insurance. I'm hundreds of pounds a week worse off, and they're throwing maybe a £10 little bonus at me for national insurance. Come off it. It's a joke. It's insulting. It's put me off the Conservatives even more.
They might have actually even done that deliberately so that they can have a show-stopping next budget.
But inheritance tax, as someone that wants to leave everything that I've worked hard for my whole life to my children, and there's a lot of people like us out there,
Except there are...
It shouldn't even be a thing. Inheritance tax should be got rid of completely.
But there are not a lot of people out there like you, because only 4% of people in this country are affected by inheritance tax. 96% of people in this country don't pay it because there is a £325,000 threshold after which you pay 40%.
That's going to change massively because of the housing crisis, though, isn't it?
But at the moment, and that's going to take a long time, at the moment, that is a huge number of people who don't pay it.
But why should those people, seriously, all of them, unless they had got lucky, why should they have to?
Because inheritance isn't your own hard work. Inheritance is that you got lucky and you happen to have people to leave you things. That's not a skill, it's not an achievement, it's pure luck.
No, but
hold on. Yeah.
Do you know how much flat you get for £325,000 in London? That's like a one-bedroom flat.
The main thing is...
But lots of people work hard and don't have a flat to leave anybody. That's not a metric.
I don't spend as much time with my children because I work hard. I work on here, I've got events company, I've got my pub. So I'm working as hard as I can, and I'm missing out on things with my kids to provide them down the line. I want to leave them everything, and it's unfair that I've paid tax for this hard work and then they're going to get taxed on my tax.
You think Adam's kids shouldn't get anything?
I think, as I said to you in the break, I am delighted to pay income tax. I didn't do anything to have parents who have a lot of money. I think it's really good that, given that I am more privileged than most people in this country, I will give some of that back to the state. I think it's very appropriate and very right.
You've given to the state your whole life while you were alive.
Yeah, but if I have more, I should give more. That's right. That's correct. It's good.
That infuriates me. I don't want the state to have anything of mine.
That's really sad, Adam.
Well, it's not really sad.
It's not very community-minded.
I don't care. I'm thinking of my children.
And I think tax in his pub on his VAT.
I just think it's wildly selfish not to want to give.
You know
more
what
if
I think
have
might
more.
be? Like, I think people might be more sympathetic in the round with what you would say, Rebecca, if they felt as though they were getting bang for their buck of what we're spending our tax on anyway, or they felt it was going to the right places.
Sure, and I understand that, and I think we all feel frustrated by the cost of living and the way that taxes are used. But again, the problem with inheritance tax is that people assume they're going to pay it. People do not realise how vanishingly rare it is to pay it.
At least my taxes are funding foreign wars in Ukraine and whatever, you know, great, thanks, what great value.
But we do think there was a bit of a scoop in amongst that Priti Patel stuff, right, which is that she is absolutely adamant we're not going to get a May election, and she did mention your fiscal event, which she thinks is going to take place, well, obviously before the next election, which apparently could well be November. So in that, we might then have more conversations like this where it won't just be dull man delivers dull budget. It'll be, oh, that's something. So there we go.
They've got to do a lot because people have had enough of the Conservative Party. We don't trust them.
It sounds like on that one thing alone, you'd actually vote for the Conservatives. If they scrapped inheritance tax, that might be enough for you.
It would take a lot for me to vote for them.
I think that would present voters genuinely with an absolutely massive choice. It would move the dial.
But the majority of them won't pay it.
All right, OK, well, fine. Well, there we go, fine. But it would move the dial, is what I'm saying, and he needs a bit of that. Now, Keir Starmer's proven that he's got a hunger for power, but in a rather shocking interview yesterday, Labour grandee Lord Mandelson slammed Keir Starmer for indulging in his appetite.
Starmer needs to shed a few pounds, and that would be an improvement.
Well, if that wasn't already bad enough, Jeremy Hunt jumped on the fat-shaming bandwagon during the budget today.
I know he's been taking advice from Lord Mandelson, who yesterday rather uncharitably said he needed to shed a few pounds. Ordinary families will shed more than a few pounds if that lot get in. If he wants to join me on my marathon training, he's most welcome as well.
Jeremy Hunt's stand-up career going well, I see there. Rebecca, is it ever OK to fat-shame a politician? If they said this about a woman, it'd be terrible.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I can't imagine they would think it was appropriate to say that about a woman, because it wouldn't be. I would say that Mandelson is worse than Hunt here. Hunt is at least trying to be funny. Mandelson was just being mean and illogical. Boris Johnson was much fatter than Keir Starmer. I think Keir Starmer's quite sexy. I don't think there's any...
No, seriously, you did actually tweet something to that effect earlier today. You don't mind me saying. I think you said that Keir Starmer would, quote, get it.
Yes, Patrick, he would. Except, you know, I'm in a relationship.
In
so
his
now
army,
not,
in his army jacket.
He looked fit.
Quite attractive.
Yeah, there used to be a rumour that the protagonist of Bridget Jones is based on him.
He's got the most nasal voice I've ever heard in my life.
He wouldn't be doing any talking, Adam.
Rebecca would seal his mouth shut.
This is just a kid, not about the chatting.
So we don't... So, right, no. By the way, this is not us fat-shaming Keir Walker. The opposite, apparently.
No.
He's deeply sexy.
I think Hunt might have magic mirrors at home, you know, looking at himself, to be fair. I don't think he's got any right to have a go at it.
I don't think he's bad either. What? I think it's quite attractive. I also think Angela Rayner's very attractive. I'm an equal opportunity employer.
That's fair enough. All right, fair enough. Well, look, apparently, to add insult to injury, one Labour voter called into LBC yesterday. By the way, I am convinced this is a joke, but called into LBC yesterday to take issue with the Labour leader's diet.
What puts me off Labour a little bit is the fact that Starmer is a vegetarian but not a vegan. It says something to me about his character, you know, that kind of sitting on the fence thing, and I don't know why he doesn't go the whole way.
I mean, come on. This is brilliant. Anyway, all right, look, moving on. You could win the Spring Essentials in our latest Great British giveaway. It's a garden gadget package, a shopping spree, and £12,345, that's £1,2,345, in cash. Here's all the details.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven, and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. Coming up, was actor Sir Michael Gambon right to cut his mistress of 20 years out of his will. And was J.K. Rowling wrong to lash out at a gobby trans activist on Twitter? All the details on those two stories when I crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But she's touted to be Donald Trump's vice president by some people. But why did Marjorie Taylor Greene say this to Emily Maitlis?
Why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers, and really, why don't you f*** off? How about that?
Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail, and some of us just abroad. You know, just two were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in fear, and the fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and to not to let Putin to destroy Ukraine, to defeat Ukraine. That is an important issue because just Ukraine, that's not just in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. Ukraine just fighting for their territorial integrity, but fighting for the whole European countries, because after Ukraine, other countries could appear, other subject of aggression could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
It's Patrick Christys tonight. Now it's time for more of your front pages. OK, we start with the Telegraph. Hunt signals the end of NI. They've got the budget at a glance on the side. Look, a lot of other papers have done this as well. National insurance, child benefit, families given a child benefit boost after income threshold raised from 50 to 60k. 1 million more migrants to prop up the economy. The Telegraph also goes in with, and 6 billion ploughed into our NHS. We go to the Express. Britain ready for takeoff. Wow. Chancellor, we're on the path to lower taxes. National insurance cut by 2p. Fuel and alcohol duty frozen. Leave it, Adam. Inflation will finally drop below 2%. All right, there we go. Mirror. Stagnant, stagnant, stagnant. After 14 years in power, is that the best you can do? We deserve better, says the Mirror. The Daily Mail. Will it be enough to see off Labour? Well, not by the sounds of this. Will it be enough to see off Labour? They go for another 2... Look, we all know the drill by now, don't we? And they have got a cartoon on the front there of what I believe is supposed to be Jeremy Hunt with an empty hat. No rabbit. In fact, the rabbit is legging it away. So there we go. There were no rabbits out of the hat for Jeremy Hunt. OK, all right, look, those are all your front pages. You will no doubt by now be sick of the budget. All right. Here, joining me again is my press bag, editor-at-large, Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, has the former BBC presenter Emily Maitlis met her match? Take a look at this encounter with Republican Vice President contender Marjorie Taylor Greene over stateside.
Can you tell me why so many people that support Donald Trump love conspiracy theories, including yourself? He seems to attract lots of conspiracy theorists.
Well, let me tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist, and the left and the media spreads more conspiracy theories. We like the truth. We like supporting our Constitution, our freedoms, and America first. So,
what about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space lasers.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers, and really, why don't you f*** off? How about that?
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Well, there we go. Apparently, Greene said in a social media post 6 years ago that she believed California's deadliest wildfire was caused by space lasers that were connected to the Rothschilds, a wealthy Jewish banking family, apparently. But this isn't the first time Marjorie has gone viral. Back in February, she said this to Lord Cameron.
And David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Well, she shoots from the hip, that lady, doesn't she? She certainly shoots from the hip. What cracked me up, by the way, was a load of other journalists going, Emily Maitlis showed astonishing professionalism in the face of that. What do you want us to do, chin her? She asked her a question. She's been told to F off. Well, she didn't bite her nose off. She did really well there. Anyway, Adam, what do you make of Marjorie's flair?
I'm not a fan of Emily Maitlis. I find her arrogant. I find her patronising. So I think it did make me laugh. But obviously, what she said about space lasers, I don't particularly believe now.
I'm not sure many people actually believe what she said about space lasers. Maybe they do. But, yeah, I mean, do you think Maitlis deserved it?
So I think it is a really funny clip, and I've watched it a lot of times today, but actually it also is slightly worrying because I'm concerned about somebody being at that level of diplomacy who doesn't have a full control over their temper, and also for the contempt that they're showing when they are approached by the British press and by the British government. The way that she spoke to David Cameron, that is not appropriate. She should be respecting David Cameron. Emily Maitlis maybe less so, but I'm worried by that woman. I think she's a problem.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Rumours that she might be the... I don't really think she is going to be...
I hope not, but Donald Trump needs someone safe and sensible to calm him down, not that.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'd love to see it, but I'm not sure I'd love to live under it. But there we go. What do you make of it? Do you think Emily Maitlis has been unfairly sworn at there?
Emily was asking for it. Did you see how she looked back at the camera? She was so happy she'd got her money short and her money quote. And obviously, after David Cameron had said something along, she said something along those lines to David Cameron, Emily was gunning for the same kind of reaction. And she
good. Look at that. That's the look.
She's how happy. Thrilled she is. She's like, nailed it. This will be talked about on Patrick Christys tomorrow.
That's what she's thinking. You can think, oh, I'm glad I've been told to.
But then isn't that quite a worrying? Isn't that a worrying thing about journalism in general? That every time you see an interview, you can tell that every journalist, left or right, is looking to get the biggest, grabbiest headline, not to ask proper questions.
Yeah, it's outcome generated.
It's bad. It's really worrying.
Well, on that note, if you're
too serious, come on, it's funny.
If you're ever reading the newspaper, OK, and you flick past the letters section, I advise you to reconsider. We spotted this earlier today. Michelle Dewberry actually alerted me to this earlier today, so thank you very much, Jubes. So take a little listen to this. We've put this to audio because I think the full effect of this can only be had when you read out, OK, what Jackie from Gloucester had to say.
More than heartfelt thanks to the kind person who found my small trolley case on a GWR Paddington to Gloucester train on Wednesday and handed it in at Cheltenham. Among the contents was something of absolutely no monetary value, but which was irreplaceably important to me. Blessings to you, my friend. Thank you too to Lost Property at Cheltenham for contacting me. My mobile number was on the label. And to the scum who helped themselves to 2 boxes of chocolates packed inside, I hope you choke on them.
It's a tale of two halves, isn't it? Blessings to the fair people who found my bag. Oh, thank you so much. To the scum who ate my chocolate, I hope you choke on them anyway. I love that stuff. I love it.
It was so good. I love the fact you got a narrator for it as well. Excellent acting from that narrator.
Fantastic.
She nailed it, Jackie.
It was indeed. Now, Jackie, I know you watch. I know you watch the show, Jackie. You sound like someone who watches the show. You sound like someone who could write my monologues, all right? I want you on the show. I want Jackie from Gloucester on this show tomorrow night, please. So, yes, come on, oblige us, oblige us. Right, it's time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. All right, Charlotte, who is your Greatest Britain?
My Greatest Britain is the Lord Lieutenant of Berkshire, who is basically, I'm sorry to say this, but a nobody. But he's been handing out gongs in place of all the royals that have gone AWOL for various reasons. So now there's some random guy from Berkshire hanging out the gong. And, I think Princess Anne would have been better than nobody.
She's not off as well as she, Anne.
She was off today as well. What? Yeah, she was off yesterday, yeah.
She's the best one.
She is the best one. So if you get your gong, right, you're expecting a royal, but you're not getting one
So you work your entire life to get a knighthood or whatever.
Yeah.
And then some bloke from Berkshire turns up and gives it to you.
Yeah, it's not on. But
where's Lady C? She'll do it, I'm sure.
Lady C will do it.
You should do it, Patrick.
I would love to do it. I've asked, but apparently no. Adam, who's your Greatest Britain?
Mine is J.K. Rowling for hitting back at India Willoughby and really putting them back in her box or his box.
OK. All right, OK, there we go. Rebecca, your greatest Britain?
Mine is a surprise to me. It's David Cameron, who I think is actually doing a really surprisingly good job. He has been on 36 visits to 26 different countries, and you've not heard a single peep about him screwing anything up. That is actually incredible. In this day and age where everyone watches everything you do. So I think good on you, David Cameron. Good work.
I believe we can show you some David Cameron now, you lucky people.
Of course, I'm working with the Ministry of Defence to make sure we really do ramp up the defence production that Ukraine needs and that we're going to need in a more dangerous world. We've done all those things, but there's a lot more to do.
A lot.
Do you have him back as would you have him back as Prime Minister?
No one should come back. This is not a bad reality TV show. Find some new people who are good at their job who haven't screwed up before.
OK, all right. What do you think? Would you have him back?
I think he should come back. I'd love to.
Let me just tell you.
Nostalgic. I love seeing David.
He's diabolical. He should never be back anyway, and it's a big mistake that the Conservative Party brought him back. That's lost them even more votes.
Why?
We don't trust him.
I don't trust any of them.
Why not?
Just don't trust him.
Why?
On
what basis? You can't just say that with no
Why
evidence.
has he been parachuted back?
No, fair enough.
It stinks.
Because things were going badly, and he had some of the best approval ratings in office.
Yeah, I get you. It is a bit of desperation now, and it's a bit of a wet. But anyway, right, today's greatest Britain is J.K. Rowling. There we go. Right now, Union Jackass time, Charlotte.
OK, controversially, I'm going with the fact that Michael Gambon didn't give his mistress any money. Because she wasn't just a mistress, she'd been with him for 20 years. His wife was on board with him having this mistress, and she had 2 kids by him who have not really been left anything. They've been left £10,000 and a trophy. And they're like...
Sorry, what?
Yeah, so he's got a £1.5 million fortune. He left his wife everything. Fair enough that she was his wife. But he also had a mistress for 20 years with whom he had 2 children. They've got nothing. Well, they've got £10,000, but...
We're not about to have Gambon's lawyers on the phone here, are we? I mean, this guy is legit, isn't it? I mean,
I think that's ghastly. I'm on your side. I want to make mine yours. I think that's awful. Horrid Gambon.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Right, mine is the UN. Yet again, they have appointed a trans woman to represent women of the UK. There's 35 million women in this country, and they pick a trans woman, i.e. a man. It's unacceptable.
All right, well, I hadn't seen that story, but there we go. Go on, Rebecca.
I'm cross with Dumbledore now, but my original choice was Jeremy Hunt MP. A little bit for the fact-shaming, but more for the fact that he referred to Angela Rayner as Angela in the House, which was ignoring the correct protocol, which is to say the Honourable Lady, or to use her job title. Well, not very nice behaviour.
I thought you fancied him.
I fancy all of them.
Oh, well, there we go. OK, well, today's Union Jackass is Gambon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I was absolutely astonished when I found out this story. So he decided to cut his mistress of 20 years and 2 children out of his will.
Yeah.
Because I'm also quite astonished that a man with his stature has managed to only leave £1.5 million. He's been in every single film for ages. Anyway, right, thank you. What a fantastic show this evening. I will see you tomorrow night at 9 p.m. It's Headliners up next for you, so they're going to pick the papers apart in even more detail. See you tomorrow at 9.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest GB News forecast from the Met Office. Yeah, there was some warm, sunny spells during Wednesday, but for many over the next 24 hours, it is going to be cloudy with an increased chance of showers developing through Thursday. We've got high pressure to the east. That's bringing a lot of low cloud into eastern parts. We keep the clear spells overnight in the south and the west. Where we do have the clear spells, there'll be a touch of frost and some fog patches forming. A few showers continuing across parts of Cornwall as well. Otherwise, many places will be dry. And we start the day with a bit of a chill in the air, certainly where we've got those frost and fog pockets in the west. But it will soon warm up. The cloud will lift as well, and actually with the rising cloud, it's going to be a brighter day across northeastern parts of the UK. Still a lot of cloud, and that cloud bubbling up, some sharp showers will develop, particularly through the Midlands, East Wales, into later on parts of northern England. Away from the showers, though, plenty of dry and bright weather. Best of the sunshine in the west and southwest. Highs of 12 or 13 Celsius, although still a chill in the east. And it's going to be increasingly breezy through Thursday and into Friday. That breeze coming from the east will make it feel on the cold side, but increasingly sunny spells will develop in the south on Friday. And it's going to be largely dry. Same can't be said for the weekend. Increasingly spells of showery rain will move north across the country. 8 Celsius in the north, 12 further south.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03